Hi, and welcome back to the Virtual Coach Advantage podcast. We've got a really great topic we're discussing today. It's something I actually coach a lot of people on, and it's about managing up, and particularly when you're stepping up to that C-suite role, going to board for the first time, and how you influence and start working at a board level. So I'm delighted today to be joined by Neela, our master coach and co-founder of Springboard Future. And as you know, Neela does a lot of coaching at the C-suite level, and also really delighted to be joined by a great friend of ours, Wayne Bowers. Now, Wayne's background is in asset management, and he was formerly the CEO and CIO at Northern Trust Asset Management International, and he currently works with a lot of startups, fintechs in the eSports industry, consulting and helping them as they're thinking about their future strategy and growth. So welcome, Wayne. Great to have you here
Thank you.
today.
Welcome aboard. Thank you very much for inviting me. Look forward to today's discussion.
So this is something that my coachees talk to me about all the time, Wayne, and it is when I'm stepping up for the first time and I'm starting to go to board, that's pretty intimidating. So what's your top tips and advice for people as they start to engage at a board level?
Well, firstly, don't worry. I mean, the individuals have obviously done a very good job to get where they are in terms of either starting a venture or being given that ownership or responsibility for a significant part of a company's business. And so they should have an inbuilt confidence in themselves in terms of it's not a different audience, it's the same audience, it's the people that they've been interacting with through their career to get where they are today. So the first tip I would say is just, treat it as a normal team meeting. It really is. And that I think psychologically can help an individual prepare for the meeting. Sometimes you can see people trying to overcomplicate what should be an already complicated topic, and it doesn't need to be. If anything, it needs to be simplified and made easy for the board members, especially external board members that aren't necessarily industry practitioners, to understand what the individual is trying to present as well. So again, I always felt that if you treat those types of meetings and the preparation, the presentation, and the actual delivery as a team meeting, it takes a big barrier and weight off someone's shoulders, especially for the first few times when you go through that.
I also really like the point about keeping it simple, because obviously there's times when we go into those big meetings and we think that we have to appear like we know everything, right? And we have to have all of the answers, but we don't necessarily have to have them at our fingertips, do we, Wayne?
No, and I think also that's an excellent point. I think to have continuing challenges or questions that you have when you're running your business, and being able to allow the board, especially a corporate board, an insight into the challenges that you've had and the questions that you've got, because again, you're there to present results, but also you're there to provide transparency in terms of what your business unit or what your area of responsibility is coping with, and it can't always be good news. So to engage the board at that level and to be able to have challenges and questions, not only will you give the board a very good understanding of the issues that you're currently facing, but also sometimes you can tease out some really good solutions. People may have gone through that same situation. They may be able to advise you, go and speak to this person or this organization. They can really help with this. It's not a big deal, or you feel it's a big deal, but it's not a big deal. It's very manageable. And again, from the individual's perspective, they should be walking out of that meeting again with the kind of the weight lifted off their shoulders. Not only have they completed the update, but you could find that you've got some allies and some solutions given back to you by the board.
And there's 2 points I want to pick out there, and Neil, I'm going to bring you in here because that bad news that Wayne was talking about, it's not always good news, is it? Um, I just want to get your perspective on, from a coaching perspective, thinking about how you're going to deliver that news so it can influence what then Wayne's talking about, which is getting the support and the help, because that's exactly what the board's there for.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting point, and I actually want to sort of roll back slightly from that. I think one of the key things that people who step up onto board, in my experience, need is a very clear sense of who they are as a leader, and also be clear about how they present, how they, and I don't mean present as in words, but actually their very presence and what it is for them to be a leader, because actually it does impact how they deliver bad news as well, or perceived bad news. So what is that about? What do they need in terms of results from actually a delivery like that? Who have they connected with before the meeting? How are their relationships with other board members? How do they socialize? What are their networks? These are sort of areas that I would be working with a board member on in order to really enable them to be able to deliver good news and bad news, but also be balanced about that in the way that they put it forward.
Yeah, and there's a bit there, Neela, which is the connection to I think what Wayne is saying, which is like the board is there to help you, right? So if you build the relationships with them, not just in that meeting, but outside, you can then be pulling on them for their expertise, because it's not just about going and presenting and saying, "Hey guys, I'm doing a good job." It's they are there to help you, aren't they, Wayne?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. One of the challenges that I've seen, and I've been brought in the last few years, where there have been issues with the board level, and that it can stem from those senior members, those very experienced members on a board, either as a non-exec or as a co-owner, as an investor, but without kind of day-to-day interaction with the business, really not understanding their area and level of responsibility and what a board actually does. So you find that you can have people quite genuinely trying to help the business, but not really assisting the executive team, the people that are doing the job day to day. They're not in the field, they're not in the weeds, they're not dealing with the problems. These people come in, on a quarterly basis. They're probably getting monthly updates, and they really try their best. They're coming from a good place, but they really should take a step back and allow the executive team or the people that are building that business the space to actually try to work through the issue. And the reason I've been brought in is because there's just been a confusion and a muddling at that level in terms of, well, what do we do? How do we do it? And you can strip back the problem, and you can find and identify the problem, which then means you can work on a solution without many different actors trying to get involved, and they all have a different lens on the issue, and that can cause the executive team big problems, because what they're then faced with is not only trying to deal with the corporate problem or the business issue, but also the external or the investor board members that have a different view, and a different view in terms of not only the problem but the solution, and there can be conflict created at those meetings as well, which is unfortunate and very unhelpful.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point, Wayne, and I'm going to bring in Neela because I have seen that in organisations actually, and I've seen the conflict it's caused and the misunderstanding of roles and responsibilities. Neela, you must have seen that in other organisations you've been coaching in.
Oh yeah, I mean it is endemic actually. Where, and funny enough, the coaching session I've had just before I've come on today is exactly on that topic. What are our roles and responsibilities? I think that's one aspect, and people not really being extremely clear about that, and reporting lines and structures. But also, I think just going back to Wayne's one of his previous points around this, these relationships. I think what's really important when you step up onto a board is that very quickly you become equitable in your relationships with every single member of that board, because it's not about so much your technical expertise. A lot of the stuff that you're going to have to do is around actually jointly doing them. And the relationships that you have with people are the things that actually enable you to do them. So I think it's a combination, if you like, of being clear about roles and responsibilities and reporting in and who does what, but also around the relationships and paying really good attention to them. And if you are a new leader and you're finding yourself feeling at a disadvantage, really getting to grips with that pretty quickly, because that will actually hold you back as a leader in terms of stepping up.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, that, Neela. I just want to bring us back around a bit to what Wayne was talking about earlier about, keeping it simple. I've actually also just had a conversation with a coachee this morning who is sort of going to the board for the first time. And one of the things that they've said is feels like quite a big change, is that the boards are looking for quite a lot of facts and figures. They want it to be factual. And it actually reminded me of a conversation, Wayne, we had many years ago when we worked together, when you were the CEO at Northern Trust International. And it reminded me of a conversation we had where you said to me, Emma, come to me with the facts. Like, lay it out for me, give me the facts. And actually, I thought, oh, this is great because I can impart this knowledge to my coachee today. But I do hear that a lot, that boards are looking for certain things. Is that your experience, Wayne?
Yeah, you can see a flip flop in terms of different stages of an issue or a challenge or a growth venture as well. So, and the example I give is, we've been working with a new organisation for the last probably six quarters now, and the type of information the board requested at the beginning was very much kind of simplified, heavy graphical content, 3 or 4 pages of direction, strategy, overlook. Then they requested, to your earlier example, your coachee's request, a lot more granular detail. So we went from 4-page submissions to the last one I think was about 54-page submission. So text heavy, lots of detail, But what's interesting is that the follow-on questions that you get post the meeting are all embedded within the document. So there's so obviously it's there. The answers are there, right? So someone or the collective have asked for that level of information, but actually either haven't read it properly or have missed parts, or So again, what we've then done is kind of reverted back to more of a graphical heavy format, which summarizes certain facts and figures with some strap lines, which can be quite detailed. So one page of kind of really clearly presented information, graphic heavy. Next page, bullet points. Next page, graphical heavy. Next page, bullet points. So there's kind of a mix. But it wasn't something that we had decided to do. It was based on this kind of flip-flop request from the board of investors in terms of what they want to see at certain stages of, and you could see it from their seat, which is again another important concept, is to look at the problem or the question from their perspective. In the early days, they just wanted to get a feel of the activity. So what are we doing? Where are we going? What's it involved with? So they didn't need detail. And then quite quickly, they probably felt, we really need to know everything about this. We absolutely need all the details, which they got. And then there was a level of, okay, well, would you mind summarizing it again, please? And they didn't say that, but it was obvious in terms of the questions that they asked, and the information was already there, that they needed help extracting the key points, etc. So could we have saved some time? Perhaps, but we also, you run the risk of then kind of alienating certain board members who genuinely want to have the information, or those that really don't understand the detail and need some help. So again, it's you're on a journey together at the end of the day, so you're having to kind of create that response network to make sure you're delivering what they're asking for.
Great. I want to take us slightly down a different path, because I want to talk about so obviously at Springboard we do a lot of coaching with tech startups, and I know, Wayne, that's where you do a lot of consultancy as well. And we sort of find that a lot of people we're working with are actually, still early on in their careers, but they've started in these startups, and all suddenly, they're on the exec committee. And I don't know whether it was an article I read or something, I read about, some of the more famous startups, Facebook or whatever, years ago, where they're like, I'm going to turn up to the board meeting as me. I'm going to turn up in my hoodie. There can be a bit of a cultural difference when we're working in startups between the people in the startups and the boards. Have you seen that, Neela? Let's bring you in on that question first.
Yeah, I was just smiling because I've definitely seen that. And I've had a real conversation with myself about it, actually, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what people wear. It's what they bring to the board. And I think, but it is interesting, isn't it? There's sort of preconceived ideas about what a board member looks like and does. And I think particularly in the growth and tech areas that we're working in, Emma, a lot of these people, and I am generalizing, are a lot younger, highly talented, really going for it. They're a different demographic, different ways of being, different everything. And it's quite an interesting clash when they're actually raising funds and coming into the orbit of the more standard type board member and how that fits together. And I think actually there is a responsibility on both sides of that equation on how they meet in the middle. So some of those younger entrepreneurs, how they start, filling in how they need to be in these much more corporate type settings, but also a change from the more standard type board member on how they embrace that new thinking, that better way of doing things, because I think they've both got things to teach the other. So I find it very, very interesting when those sort of two cultural things start mixing, and if it's done well, it can be absolutely brilliant in terms of taking an organization forward.
Wayne, I know obviously you do a lot of work in the fintech and the eSport space, so quite different industries, right? Have you seen any cultural differences, in those industries and people kind of managing up, but also then with the boards?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love exposing people to both sides of the coin as well. So that obviously I come from a financial services asset management background, so I know what a bank feels like, looks like, inside of a meeting room, the etiquette that you have when you go to one of those meetings. And from a startup perspective, it's important to kind of respect, I think, the culture of that organization. You're, at the end of the day, you're asking them for millions and millions of dollars, right? So again, you should have a level of respect. It doesn't mean that you wear black shoes and a skinny tie, with cufflinks at all, not at all. But then on the other side of it, it's not just esports, it's actual physical sports. So I'm involved in some motorsport businesses as well, which are at the high end. So kind of in Formula One, World Endurance. So these are very professional outfits, travel the world 50 weeks of the year. And so what I've been doing is getting people from one sphere and one level of culture to interact with the other side. So rather than have the meeting in a bank boardroom, I'll get the investors or the fundees that will be board members to a racetrack or to an innovation lab and to watch a tournament, an esports tournament, or to actually watch a race. And you don't kind of want to tell them what to wear, but please don't turn up in a three-piece suit or your best business dress with high-heeled shoes when you're kind of in Monza or Barcelona and it's a very beautiful, relaxed, but high-intensity environment. Wear something that's comfortable on your shoes. Here's a cap, a team cap. I have a whole collection of caps here from various different events. And immediately they feel a level of alignment and a level of, they don't feel alien in that area. And again, that there's a level of comfort that they have, that they feel as though they're part of that team. And it's exactly the same scenario I would give a startup, a tech startup, when they're walking into a bank. That you can come in shorts and flip-flops and a baggy t-shirt that you haven't washed for 2 weeks. No problems at all, because your idea is amazing. However, you may feel slightly uncomfortable. So why put yourself in that level of discomfort? So you may want to just wear a polo shirt and chinos and casual shoes with no socks. No problem to store. That's still part of your identity. It's still part of your but you're going to feel more comfortable when you're presenting to 7 or 8 people that are dressed very formally in a very formal setting. So again, it works both ways. And again, I've done it several times now where you genuinely ask the people at the end of that meeting, at the end of the process, in the lift or at the end of the day, walking back to the car, and they're exhausted because they've been outside all day and it's really fun, etc., etc. And how did it go? And they go, oh, it's amazing, it's so good, really enjoyed myself. Not one level of, oh, it was so uncomfortable, I had a shirt and tie on, and or my high heels were kind of, like going into the soft tarmac or into the rubber floor of the garage, and the other side of it, the tech venture people saying, I've really got on well with the potential investors, but my God, what a staid environment to be in, and I just felt so alien, and especially when we did the tour, I really wished I'd worn something smarter. So you can avoid that level of discomfort without stripping away someone's identity.
Yeah, I love that. Keep your own identity, but don't feel like you're a complete alien in the environment. Well, we've loved talking to you today, Wayne. I think there's some great tips there for us to take away, which is, well, I'm taking away, keep it simple. Think of it as any team meeting. Go in there with your confidence. Nina, you talked about relationship building and networking with that board and using them to your best advantage. We've talked about the cultural divide, which we could do a whole different podcast on. Yeah. We may well do. But, be yourself, but make sure that you are showing up at your best, I guess, is what we're saying. Showing up to get the best out of the day. Well, thank you so much, Wayne, for joining us. It's been great to talk to you. And thanks to our listeners for joining us on the virtual Coach Advantage. We've loved coaching you today. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We'd love to hear your feedback, any comments you've got, or even requests for topics. So please do get in touch. You can reach us on our website, which is springboardfuture.com. Follow us on our LinkedIn or Twitter pages. Thanks for joining the Virtual Coach Advantage podcast. We hope to coach you again soon.